Hello and welcome, everyone. I'm Marinell Rousmaniere, the President and CEO of EdVestors, and I'm thrilled to see so many new and familiar names and faces gathered here today. Thank you for joining us for our 19th Annual Education Showcase. First things first, we want to know who's in the room with us today. I see many have already added their name, pronouns, and organization to the chat. Please continue to do so while we get started. Also want to let folks know that we're offering today's event with Spanish translation and have live captioning to make it as accessible as possible. You can access the event in Spanish by clicking interpretation at the bottom of your Zoom screen and then clicking Spanish. We also advise all speakers today to please speak slowly in order for the interpretation to be made possible. To turn on live captioning, click Live Transcript at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and then click Show Subtitles. You can find these instructions in the chat as well. I'm going to pause and welcome Claudio Ruiz, our Spanish interpreter, to translate the directions I've just shared.
Thank you, Marinell. I will now proceed to give instructions in Spanish. Muy buenas tardes, bienvenidos a estar en este evento anual de EdVestors. Para tener acceso a la interpretación en español, por favor, vaya a la parte de abajo de la pantalla, escoja en donde dice lenguajes, en el globito, hágale clic ahí, escoja español o Spanish, y de esa manera usted podrá escucharnos. Muchas gracias y que la pasemos muy bien. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudio. To get us started, I want to begin by thanking all the educators here today. My thanks for your incredible dedication and efforts on behalf of the city's students, especially during this profoundly challenging year. I want to acknowledge all the panelists who've given up their time to join us in breakout sessions today. Thank you for sharing your perspectives on the pressing questions we'll explore today. Many thanks to all the supporters who make EdVestors work possible and that have joined us this afternoon. We're so grateful for your ongoing partnership. And finally, thank you to my EdVestors colleagues for making today possible, period. It's truly my privilege to work with such a talented team each and every day. 2022 marks EdVestors' 20th year. Since our founding, EdVestors has served as a connection point between those committed to equity in education and Boston's public schools. At this milestone moment, we'll be exploring the ideas of partnerships, progress, and possibilities in education throughout this year. Over the past 20 years, EdVestors has raised and invested nearly $40 million in Boston schools. We've built lasting partnerships and facilitated citywide efforts to increase opportunities for students in the arts, mathematics, and career pathways. We've spotlighted progress in our city's public schools, awarding 16 School on the Move prizes to some of Boston's most improving schools. And recently, we've seeded racial equity efforts led by school communities across the city. While EdVestors has played a role in making some aspects of the system better over those 2 decades, the hard truth is the system as a whole is not in a better place than it was in 2002. The issues we face can feel overwhelming and intractable, especially in a time of so much change. But we must keep working to improve because Boston's young people are depending on it. The work doesn't stop in these moments of great challenge. And we believe that gatherings like today can be a place where change begins, which is why your choice to join us today is so important. If we're going to come together to help the public schools in Boston move forward with a cohesive vision and coordinated effort, we need some shared understanding of where we've been, where we are now, and where we want to go. And that's why we've asked Jennifer Berkshire, education journalist and writer, and Jack Schneider, an education historian and researcher, to join us for this conversation. On the podcast they co-host called Have You Heard? And in their writing and publications, including the New York Times and the Atlantic, they bring a long and wide view of the state of public education. And we'll offer those perspectives and implications for all of us to consider. Immediately following this conversation, we will have 3 panel discussions featuring BPS students, educators, school leaders, district staff, and community partners who will explore big questions like what makes a school a good school, and what do our school communities need at this moment? And what should we be optimistic about for the future of public education in Boston? We believe the voices and experiences of those closest to the work, especially those historically marginalized in our city's schools, should be central in shaping the district's next chapter. And we're fortunate to have a leader in our city at the helm of the Boston School Committee who holds this belief as well and is committed to ensuring community voices are included in decision-making. It's my great pleasure to welcome Jeri Robinson, Chair of the Boston School Committee, who will share a few words. Thanks so much, Chair Robinson, for joining us this afternoon and for your service on behalf of Boston's young people.
Thank you, Marinell. Thank you to the Boston Public School students, educators, school leaders, and district staff and partners who are here today as speakers and as attendees. And thank you to EdVestors for providing this opportunity to listen and learn by hosting today's showcase. EdVestors is a key partner for schools and for staff at the district, investing in our schools and providing implementation support and thought partnership to our teachers, school leaders, and central office staff. In my more than 50 years working in Boston, I've seen a lot of projects and funding opportunities come and go. I appreciate that EdVestors approaches issues with exactly the kind of long-term commitment and investment we need to be able to have a positive impact for our students. Over EdVestors' last 20 years, we've seen the impacts of their efforts in art education, math education, and more recently through their career pathways and racial equity work. We are in a time of significant challenge and change in Boston public schools. Soon we will welcome a new superintendent. This is an important choice. Yet in an organization of nearly 50,000 students, 5,000 teachers, we can't expect one person alone to bring the change we need to see. We all need to ask ourselves, what are we going to do differently this time? We all have to own the work ahead. We'll all need to get engaged. There is no silver bullet to fix the challenges in education in Boston and beyond, for if there were, we would have already found it. That's why it's so important to create space to hear from those on the front lines, to understand what's happening on the ground and in the classroom and what is really needed. I'm thrilled to listen in and hear directly from you, our students, teachers, school leaders, and community partners about what matters most to you at this moment and the vision you have for the Boston Public Schools in this next chapter. My fellow members of the Boston School Committee and I want to hear from you as we continue our search for the next superintendent. Please share your thoughts with the search committee by following the link in the chat. My thanks to all of you for staying engaged and for your commitment to Boston's young people. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jeri, for those words and for being with us today. And I want to also recognize Superintendent Caselius, who's also joined us this afternoon, and thank her for all of her service to the city during this incredibly challenging